Your foot lands wrong in the grass and something strikes it. Sharp pain, then heat spreading up through your leg. You know exactly what just happened, and you know people who didn't walk away from it. The person nearby drops what they're doing and grabs your leg without hesitating, ties something tight above the bite, and starts talking you through what happens next. You have no idea if what they're about to do will save you or finish the job the snake started. You trust them anyway, because right now, trust is the only medicine you have. This moment played out constantly across the ancient world, in deserts, jungles, and farmland, long before anyone understood what venom actually was. And the strangest part isn't that people survived snake bites back then. It's how many different, completely unrelated ways ancient cultures figured out to fight back against something they couldn't see or explain. Start with Egypt, because Egypt kept the most detailed records of any ancient civilization on this exact problem. There's a document called the Brooklyn Papyrus, held today at the Brooklyn Museum, that lists close to 40 different types of snakes, describes their bites, and gives a prognosis for each one, sometimes even naming which bites were considered untreatable. The papyrus itself dates to around 450 to 300 BCE, but scholars believe it's a copy of much older medical knowledge. The Egyptologist Serge Sauneron translated and published a major study of it in 1989. This is Remedy Count, the running tally we're going to build through this video, and it starts here with Egyptian physicians who had already built a working classification system for snake bites before the Greeks or Romans had one. The actual treatments people used were direct and often brutal. In India, the physician Sushruta, writing in the Sushruta Samhita around 600 BCE, described tying a tourniquet above the bite, cutting into the wound, and sucking or squeezing the venom out before it could spread. This wasn't guesswork. It reflects real, repeated clinical practice recorded well over 2,000 years ago, and versions of these same steps, tourniquet, incision, extraction, show up independently in cultures with no contact with India at all. Remedy Count moves past Egypt into a second, entirely separate medical tradition doing the same basic thing. Here's where it gets stranger. In North Africa, there was a tribe called the Scilli, and the Roman writer Pliny the Elder, in his Natural History, claims they were believed to be naturally immune to snake venom. Pliny records that the Scilli were said to test whether a newborn was legitimately theirs by exposing the infant to venomous snakes, on the belief that a true child of the tribe would be unharmed. The Greek historian Herodotus also mentions the Scilli centuries earlier, describing them as a real North African people known for their relationship with snakes. Now, we don't have solid evidence that anyone actually had true biological immunity to venom passed down by bloodline. That's not how snake venom resistance works, but the belief was real. It was written down by named ancient authors, and the Scilli made a living traveling the ancient Mediterranean as snake handlers and snakebite healers because of that reputation. This is the single biggest wait really moment in this whole video. An entire ancient profession built around the claim of inherited immunity, documented by two separate classical writers centuries apart. Remedy count keeps climbing, and here's where it gets stranger again. Around the 1st century BCE, a king named Mithridates VI of Pontus became so obsessed with not dying from poison that he reportedly took small, regular doses of various poisons and antidotes to build up his tolerance, and tested combinations on condemned prisoners. Out of this came something called Mithridatium, a compound antidote recorded by later Roman writers including Pliny and the physician Celsus. Mithridatium wasn't specifically a snakebite cure. It was built as a general poison antidote, but it became so famous that for centuries afterward, Mithridate was basically shorthand across the ancient and medieval world for any all-purpose antidote, snakebite included. A king's paranoia turned into one of the most widely referenced remedies in ancient medicine. Around the same era, the Greek poet and physician Nicander of Colophon wrote a long poem called the Theriaca in the 2nd century BCE, cataloging venomous snakes, spiders, and scorpions along with remedies for each. Nicander's work wasn't just poetry for its own sake. It became a real medical reference, copied and relied on by Greek and Roman physicians for centuries after he wrote it. Remedy count now spans Egypt, India, North Africa, Pontus, and Greece, 5 separate traditions, all independently convinced they'd found real answers. And here's the part that has to be said plainly. Almost none of these remedies, the tourniquets aside, actually neutralize venom the way modern medicine does. Mithridatium didn't cure snakebite. The Scilli weren't immune. Cutting and sucking a wound sometimes helped remove venom near the surface, but it also introduced infection and did nothing for venom that had already spread. The real fix for venomous snakebite didn't arrive until 1895, when the French scientist Albert Calmet, working at the Pasteur Institute, developed the first true antivenom serum, injecting animals with venom and using their blood serum to treat human patients. That's nearly 2,000 years after the Brooklyn Papyrus. Remedy count closes here, at the one entry on the list that actually worked the way people always hoped the others would. So how did people actually survive all those centuries in between? Part of the honest answer is luck. A large share of venomous snake bites, even without treatment, are what's known today as dry bites, where little or no venom is injected, or bites from species whose venom isn't strong enough to kill a healthy adult. Ancient survival rates were shaped as much by which snake happened to bite you as by anything the healer standing over you actually did. That doesn't make the tourniquets, the incisions, or the tribal reputations meaningless. It means people were building elaborate, confident systems of treatment on top of outcomes that were often decided before anyone touched the wound. Go back to that moment in the grass. The bite, the tightening cord above it, the person kneeling next to you who has no antivenom, no lab, nothing but inherited knowledge and steady hands. Whether you lived probably had less to do with what they did next and more to do with which snake found your foot in the first place. But they didn't know that, and neither did you. And in that moment, their confidence was the only thing standing between you and panic. That's what actually kept people alive long enough for real medicine to eventually catch up. Not always the cure, sometimes just someone willing to act like they had one. People survived venomous snake bites for thousands of years before anyone understood venom itself, because the will to fight for someone's life showed up long before the science did. If poison built one of history's strangest reputations for a king who feared being murdered, what happens when we look at the people who used poison on purpose and got away with it for years?